Peace.
Peace.
This is Joshua Law, Mr. PhD. You're just now entering the cipher called Real2reel360.
Uh-huh.
K-Wise.
Peace, God.
Bring that beat in, kid.
Indeed.
Peace.
Yeah. What's going on, party people? Welcome to the Real2reel360 show. Let's get it in.
We do the knowledge and wisdom so you can understand. Real360 shows in full command. We changing the game for how it all was taught. From bondage to freedom to an independent thought. Yo, the show is here to bring about a change for real. To lighten everyone so we all know the deal. 360 degrees is a fact. We created the show to give our love back to our communities so we can know what's going on and give them the support from knowledge to born. So if you're ready to learn, then it's time to go. Sit back and relax and enjoy your show. Peace.
What's good? Peace and blessings, party people, to all the gods and nerds of the lost 5% nation, and to all the families on the human families of the planet Earth. I say peace. This is DJ K-Wise, aka Kato the Black Superhero. Welcome you to another special and explosive episode of the Real2reel360. So without further ado, let's get it in. I got to bring on my co-host with the most, my brother in God himself, none other than my man. 50,000 grand still waiting on my 5%, but it's all good. Joshua Allah, aka Mr. PhD. Peace, Lord. What's good, family?
Peace to all nation of gods and earths, Allah's 5%. To all our followers and listeners, today is a very impactful day. Today is a monumental day for Real2reel360, you know what I'm saying, as a whole, because we're bringing on an individual who's a part of a group that ushered disco, funk, you know what I'm saying, and then also too wore the same banner as the Nation of Gods and Earths as we did. They were the first group to usher out, you know what I'm saying, to the world, the 5% nation, and the music is everlasting. You know what I'm saying? The music is everlasting. So, you know what I'm saying, the funk. And at this moment in time, I want to bring on Mr. Stevie Beats Adorno from the group GQ.
Y'all doing?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I salute. Peace and blessings.
Right. Honor to be here, gentlemen. Honor to be on Real2reel. Making it real. Keeping it real.
That's it, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You know, growing up, you know what I'm saying, as 5%ers or what have you, in New York, the first thing that we heard was GQ, right? And when we found out about Sabu, you know what I'm saying, and the history with Sabu and the 5% Nation, you know what I mean? Yeah. It was like, I don't know, like some cats grew up with being embraced with Rakim because he had the flag on or whatever, and everybody see it. But we grew up loving GQ because GQ represented us. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. They represented us from the hood. You know what I mean? Us.
That's the truth.
And it was like, man, to have you on today, you know what I'm saying, means a lot to me. And I know it means a lot to my brother K. But I want you to, if you don't mind, to introduce yourself and how long that you was with the group and your relationship and things of that nature.
Sure. Well, as you've all been hearing here, my name is Stevie Beats Adorno, drummer for GQ and lots of other people. I also play for Natalie Cole, The Whispers, Phyllis Hyman, Carol Williams, long list of people that I've been playing with over the years. But GQ was pretty much like right from my neighborhood. I lived down the road from Raheem, the lead vocalist, Raheem LeBlanc, and he lived like 2 blocks away from me. And how it all started out was GQ was actually a band called the Rhythm Makers, and they were signed to Delight Records, and they had a song out, I think it was called "Soul on Your Side," and it was a version, an early version. That song was an early version of Disco Nights. It was the same groove, the same beat, same bass line, but it had a different lyric. And at that time, there was a different setup. I think the only people that were in GQ at that time were, that everybody remembered, would be Raheem and Sabu. Boo was in the group at that time also, but they were, like I said, they were called the Rhythm Makers. They had that single out, and it did okay. You know, it wasn't a gold or platinum, but it got noticed. You know, it got a lot of play. And what happened was they were seen by a guy named Lark and Arnold, who was a producer over at Arista. He had seen us at a club, at the band at a club in the Bronx that they used to play at a lot. I was not in the band yet when they were called the Rhythm Makers. What happened was they brought them into the studio. They liked how they sound. They brought them into the studio, and they started to replace the members of the band. They kept Raheem, they kept Boo, and they ended up pulling in a different keyboard player, a guy named Herb Lane, who was a fantastic human being and an amazing talent. Herb, killer keyboardist, killer vocalist. He was the right guy for them to be put into the band. And then they had put in a new drummer named Paul Service. And they ended up going into the studio. They hired Jimmy Simpson, who was the brother of Ashford and Simpson, Valerie Simpson's brother, Jimmy. And he ended up producing the first album along with Lark and Arnold. And that was the Disco Nights album. They ended up taking that song, Soul on Your Side, and reworking the whole song and turned it into Disco Nights. And the rest was history. And once that was released, the radio, you know, the fans just poured on. And the song started to really rise up the charts really fast. But what happened was they went on a short little, this was by 1979 when the album came out. They went on a short little tour. And it was just a few weeks actually, you know, just to promote the new song. They ended up doing Soul Train and all the, you know, the TV shows of the day, American Bandstand, In Concert. I think it was a show by Don Kirshner, who was around back then. And what happened was when they got back, the drummer didn't like performing and doing the live stuff, so he quit. He was actually a Jamaican guy, another really fine drummer, a great drummer, and could sing a little bit too. And but he wasn't happy with the music business side of it, so he ended up leaving right in the middle of everything. And at the time, I was playing with a band called two bands. I was playing with a band on a small label called SMI Records, and we had a top 100 hit out called "No, My Friend." And I was working with them. That was my band. It was called Devotion. And I was also in another band called Seguida on the Fania record labels. Fania was an independent label for salsa music. And they had all the early groundbreaking salsa artists like Ray Barretto, Celia Cruz, the Fania All-Stars, people on that level, Larry Harlow. These were like the pioneers of salsa music. And we were on that label. I was the drummer for a band called Seguida, New York Latin Rock. We were kind of like a Santana band mixed with R&B, funk, soul, rock. And so I was working with both these bands. And then I got the call through a buddy of mine who was friends with Raheem. They said they were looking for a drummer because they had, the Disco Nights had just come out. I think it was I Do Love You was on that same album. So they needed to go on the road. There was tours and things that had to be done. So I ended up going to the rehearsal. Again, I'm from the same neighborhood. It's a couple of blocks away from the guys. We all kind of knew each other as it was, and so I fit right into the band. And I stayed with them from 1980 to 2010, which is like almost 30 something years. So I played with them for almost 30 years, and it was an adventure, man. It was a true adventure, learning experience. I feel blessed that I had the opportunity, and I got to meet all the classic superstars, the superheroes of R&B and soul music, and do shows with them and just be friends and got to see everybody every night on these long tours that we did. So that's really pretty much how it all started out.
Wow, that's crazy. Now, like you said, you grew up down the block from Raheem, and how was getting into the music business coming from the Bronx? With the with the challenges and everybody competing so heavy, because I know during that period of time, everybody was competing, trying to get record deals and get out there. So how was it like going from one group, and I know y'all was jockeying for position, to going into GQ, which was already established?
Yeah. It was a big jump. But I got to be honest with you, I was prepared for it. Coming from the Southview section of the Bronx is where we all came from. And there was a lot of music, man. There was a lot of music. I mean, I was doing music from a really young age. My parents have photos of me at 3 years old, my first little keyboard and the first little drum set. 3 years old. I mean, that's baby. So I don't know anything else. Plus, I grew up in a family where there was a lot of performers. I had an aunt that was a showgirl in Las Vegas. I had an uncle who was a percussionist, timbalero, conguero, who played with Tito Puente. And in the building I grew up with on 174th Street and Rosedale Avenue in the Bronx, Soundview section, that building had all these musicians living in it. So even as a little boy, all my neighbors were like trumpet players, piano players, a vibraphonist from the Joe Cuba band lived upstairs from us. My uncle lived in that building too, so he was always jamming with musicians in the apartment. So I didn't know anything else. Matter of fact, as a kid growing up, I thought that's what as a man, that's what you're supposed to do, because all the men in my life were musicians. So they were all my role models, and I figured, oh, okay, that's what I'm supposed to do. Now, as far as there being like, competition, yeah, there was a lot of competition back there, because like I said, there's a lot of musicians around. But I think a lot of had to do with my want, my lust for wanting to make music. I had that drive in me. My first record with that band I mentioned before on SMI label, Devotion. That was I was 16 years old, and I was a band leader, and we were writing the songs ourselves. I'm the one that actually found us a record deal with this little independent label from Manhattan, and we ended up having a Hot 100 hit while I was in high school. It was a club hit. It wasn't like a big radio hit, but it was a club hit in New York City. So we were going to high school in the daytime and doing gigs late at night, illegally playing in bars and discos, because we were so damn young. The club owners would have us come and perform, and they'd hide us in the kitchen until it was performance time. Then they'd run us out to the stage, we'd perform, and run us back and hide us back in the kitchen again. Because back in the day, the union used to actually the musicians union actually used to show up to venues and look around and see what musicians were there and who was underage and what the hell. So that was back in the early 70s. So yeah, that's it was tough, man. You had to go through all these things, but a lot, I'm not gonna lie, a lot of it had to do with being in the right place at the right time and not turning down opportunities that would come up. For me, it was never about the money. As long as there was an opportunity to play somewhere that I thought I could be seen, or I would mix with a next level of musicians that were higher than me, that's kind of what I strove for, because I knew if I put myself into those scenarios that I would have to rise to the occasion. So that's kind of how I learned. It's like they say, throwing somebody into the deep end of the pool. That's kind of what happened with me. I threw myself into the deep end of the pool, and just never turned nothing down. Any opportunities, a chance to play, a chance to perform, I just did it. And that's how I kind of got through, from band to band, from opportunity to opportunity. And I see young people today, trying to make it in the business, and it's a different business now. It's not the way I came up. So it's a lot harder to do this on the internet. I think it's more difficult to do it on the internet, the way people are trying to do it now, getting likes and getting numbers, and that's a lot tougher, because back in the day, we used to be out there and perform. You would see us in person, and that's how you got to convince a lot of band leaders or record companies. They saw you in person. They saw what the level of the talent was. So I would say, that's back in the day. Yeah, it was tough. It wasn't easy to to get situations, but you just had to be out there. You know, you just had to be out there and do it.
To jump right in on what he was talking about, because I remember in the 70s, there was so much competition, especially in the New York area anyway, because you had Crown Heights Affair.
Yep,
you had other groups like BT Express. So I know, you know, that alone in itself was like a headhunters competition. And then I know there's lots of stories about Studio 54 and so
I have a few, but they're X-rated.
So we had Stephanie Mills in Brooklyn too. So let me ask, so working with the group and then other artists, when y'all did get together, was it a good friendly competition and a good camaraderie, or there was them sometimes them back doors, oh, y'all ain't better than us, we gonna show you this.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying. You know what? I gotta admit that it wasn't like it is today, where, you know, hip hop bands like are at war with each other, and we didn't have that. You know, like when they used to do big shows back then, when they'd be like 8, 9 acts, you know, I mean all top acts, but like 8 or 9 acts, one after another on the stage. Everybody had a hit on the radio at the same time, and there was a camaraderie between us all, because I think everyone knew and felt that we were all lucky to be there, you know. And even though you had some divas here and there, male and female divas, that had, you know, little attitudes, but overall, it wasn't anything that was too over the top, you know. I gotta say, mostly my memories of meeting, you know, like the Teddy Pendergrasses and then working with Natalie and Phyllis Hyman and all the groups, the Isley Brothers, Crowd Heights, BT. We worked with all these shows. You know, we did shows with all these groups, Chic, all the, you know, KC, and stuff, all the top. You know, we were blessed to have a couple of #1 platinum hits. You know, and so we got to do shows with, you know, Isley Brothers and you know, the classic acts. You know, Valerie and the Simpsons, you know, we got to do all of that. And I can't remember any animosity or any negativity from anybody. Everybody kind of did their own thing, and everybody else on the show had respect for each other, because we all knew what it took to be there. We knew that we were lucky to be there, and we all loved making music. Every one of us loved it. It was who we are. So we found that we were happy to have the opportunity to be ourselves and show ourselves, you know. And like with GQ, we were very unique, man. You know, that was a 4-piece band, that's small for R&B groups. All the other R&B groups we were on the road with had like 10 pieces and up. You know, we were only 4 guys. I think we were the only band like that at the time. Only 4 pieces, and we all sang. They were calling us the Black Beatles, because it was just 4 of us. And just like the Beatles, we had the same instrumentation basically, and we all sang just like the Beatles. Each guy in the band could sing. So our harmonies were sweet. You know, we would play well. We played our instruments really well. And we could sing. And we sang beautiful harmony. I mean, we did. And that's kind of what made us unique. And I do remember 9 times out of 10, all the other big ass bands that were there, you know, and with all the dozens of musicians in the bands and singers would always come up to us after the shows and say, wow, what a huge big ass sound coming out of you 4 guys, you know. And it was true, man. We had a big sound, but that's what made GQ unique, and why they made, you know, such an impact on the business at the time.
Now, when you were on stage, or when a group was on stage and you sitting there, you're listening to them play, did that amp y'all up to want to make sure that the competition level was still there, that you wanted to put on a better show than the group that performed before you?
Oh yeah, but that's natural. That's a natural thing. You know, again, I say this: it wasn't done with any meanness or animosity. It was more about just good old fashioned competition, like two baseball teams. You know, you're all brothers on the road, traveling and doing shows. So we're all kind of experiencing the same thing. But when it's time to perform, you want to be the one that just blew the house up, okay, that night. And at the time, I'm not trying to brag, but at that time, a lot of the times it was GQ that did it because, again, we had this high energy, 4-piece monster band that just had, that's what we were about. We were about the high energy. So when we performed, we blew it up. And all our music was straight through hard. You know, we just came out hard. And we would always hear at the end of the night, like I said before, all the bands coming up to us and saying, damn, 4 guys making that big ass sound. It's unbelievable, but that's who we were, you know. And like I said, we did do. There was that competition. It was there. You know, you want to be better than all the bands, but it was always done with sportsmanship. I'll use that word. It was sportsmanship. There was no meanness behind it that I can remember.
Now, how have the showmanship have changed since you started out? GQ started out, and till today, like, because you notice when you go to a show back then, you actually got a show. You actually,
That's right.
So how has the showmanship of entertaining changed since you started in the business?
Well, there's a lot of, I'd have to say there's a lot of factors that play into a question like that, because it's not just one thing. Yeah, it has changed. It has changed drastically on a lot of levels, and then of course there's foundational levels where things are actually the same. Because bottom line is you have to be able to stand in front of a crowd and perform, regardless of the technology that's changed, regardless of the amount of audience that you have access to has changed. So I would think that, you know, taking those things into factor, that it's a little more difficult now to put together shows, quality shows that can be highly entertaining. I think that if they try to go more old school in the performance presentation, they would be better off, because it's more foundational. You know, you don't have 72 dancers around you, 3 different giant screens behind you distracting, you know, and a track playing with the band playing along with a track, you know, and not being fully live. These things, this is how most of your big shows are now today, with all the technology and the screens and 100 people on stage. It's all very distracting. So it's more costly to do shows today because of that, the type of production that's required to do that, to bring it to these levels that are required apparently now. But I still find that old school artists that are keeping it old school. Like, I just went to go see Gladys recently, Gladys Knight, and she was amazing. The woman's in her 70s, okay, and she came out with her band, full band, 3 girls singing back, being pipettes, you know. And let me tell you, she sounded amazing.
Absolutely.
The show was amazing, and she didn't use no screens, no tracks, nothing. She did it old school. She came out with her band. They played their asses off. She sang her ass off, and with her library of music, she's just, her music is like the soundtrack to our lives. You know,
Yes.
we all know her music. So to hear her in front of me and hear that golden voice, that platinum voice of hers that she still has,
Yes.
you know, and that's, you know, that showed me. And then you see a Beyonce, who's also a wonderful talent, a wonderful voice, but Beyonce requires, you know, 30 screens, 50 dancers, tracks to produce the sound of the records, because they can't play that shit live. You know, and that's what you got going. It's good, but, you know, give me Gladys any day over her, because Gladys come out there with a microphone and that's it.
That's right.
Okay, and that's talent. That's talent. So for me, that's what I feel. I feel that it's a different world. You know, to answer your question, doing shows is a different world now. But if you keep it as old school as you can, I think you're better off. I think artists would be better off today.
Now with that, do you find that the younger generation are moving away from the actual artistry of the band, for as the drums, the horn, the guitars, and to actually get that type of feel, you have to go to an old school show?
Yeah, you have to if you want that sound, you have to get it the real way by having yourself a good old school band, guys that have the experience of playing multi genres of music. Because if you're only one type of a player that can only play one genre of music, you know, I only play funk or I only play rock, or I'm just a jazz musician. Well, you know, you're not going to be able to bring all those different colors to your musicianship.
That's right.
You know, and I know me as a player, I played in all kinds of bands, from Latin to jazz to R&B to hard rock to fusion. I played it all. And I found that no matter what type of band I'm in, I use things that I picked up in all those other genres, okay? And they'll be disguised in what I'm doing at the moment. But the foundational stuff that I'm playing comes from being able to play other genres of music and understand where the soul of these types of music lives. And I feel that if the younger artists today, that's what they should be striving for. If you want to learn how, because there is an increase I'm noticing of younger musicians picking up instruments again. They're putting the sampler down and they're picking up an instrument and they're starting to learn how to play. I'm meeting a lot of more young drummers, young bass players, young guitar players, and young keyboardists, even some young horn players. And they're young and they're good. So it gives me hope to see that, you know, that the chain of musicianship that I belong to, I'm a link in that chain. And I believe that I'm seeing this from these young musicians, that they are going to continue this chain of musicianship that we all are part of. And it gives me hope that you know, that younger musicians are going to start and I'm seeing it more and more in acts. There's this young singer, man, the guy from Hawaii who does all like the James Brown and Michael Jackson imitation kind of stuff. I can't think of his name, but he is he's using live musicians and bands, and I see that's a good thing. You know, may influence other young people and to give them the chance to want to learn. You know, to hear it and you want to learn yourself. So yeah, I'm thinking that that live music is on its way back, and I see young people taking more and more interest in learning how to play an instrument, and that's a good thing.
I definitely agree. Because looking at to me, the last era of great musician bands at the time, to me, was Mint Condition. And now I see that other groups now, younger groups, as like Bruno Mars and Silk
That's
Sonic.
the guy, Bruno Mars.
Bruno Mars. They're fantastic because they're going back to the roots.
That's right.
And not only going back, but going back and getting the original people that did the songs and working with them. So they're getting that true teaching of what it used to be. And I think it's coming back strong, especially I gotta give it up to them. Gotta give it up to Silk Sonic for them doing that, because originality is nothing like it.
There you go. You know, that's what I'm saying before. In order to take advantage, like he's doing, of us remaining old school R&B, disco, funk musicians, we're still here. We're all in our 60s and up now. You know, when we all started in the 70s, we're all in our 60s now. You know, I'm 65, but I'm still out playing all the time, and so is my crew, and also most of the musicians I know, and they're about my age, and we're all working. And the reason we're working is because we're the real deal. We're the ones that played this music, recorded this music, toured this music. So if you wanna bring it back, you gotta come to us.
Right.
You gotta come to us because that's who's gonna give it to you. That's who's gonna give you the real thing. You know, you can go get an imitation if you want, but it ain't the real thing, and you can hear it, you can feel it. You know, but that's what's happening. I'm starting to get more calls for gigs and recordings because we're old school. You know, you want that old school sound, you gotta call us.
Now, definitely, like you were saying, to bring R&B back, to bring soul back, you would definitely have to use the band. Now, do you feel that a lot of artists nowadays don't really have the talent outside of the studio effects to bring that type of sound back?
That is a sad truth. Yeah, there's a lot of guys that they don't have the experience. They're not out there working in the clubs, you know, and performing night after night like we did back in the 70s and 80s. You know, we were out there working 5-6 nights a week. And then when we got really popular and we started to do tours, we were doing like, you know, 31 nighters in a row, you know, 41 nighters in a row. And you need that experience in order to develop your artistry. Without it, you're just guessing. Okay. Now you could get lucky, you know, and fall into something, which happens a lot because that's the music business. But you know, if you to sustain it without the experience, that's when you get caught, and that's when you get caught and getting yourself in trouble because then you got to start relying on fake things and loops and the studios and you know and the effects and preset this preset that, you know. And again, it's the same with the recording engineers too as with the musicians. You know, you got lots of engineers out there now that call themselves recording engineers that never actually recorded a live violin or a live saxophone. They've never done it. So if you've never done that, how do you learn your art of recording and being a recording engineer? You can't. You know, because I'm gonna use, you know, preset number 6. You know that I'm sorry, but that ain't gonna work for me.
Doesn't
Okay?
fit the bill.
Yeah, I mean, you need old school people with ears. You know, we used to call good engineers guys with golden ears because they knew mic placement, how far a mic would be close to the instrument or not. Believe it or not, you know, a micro move of a microphone away from an instrument or close to an instrument makes a big difference in the sound that's the way it's recorded. People don't know that. How are you going to know that if you never did it? Then you calling yourself a recording engineer making records, you know, and there's a lot of that going on. You can hear it. You know, records sound flat. They sound flat. There's no 3D audio going on with them, no depth, you know, and yeah, so there's a lot of guys relying on this preset thing, and they'd be better off going out into the field and learning how to record live stuff because that's the best way to learn, musician wise and recording engineer wise, production wise.
Absolutely.
Definitely. Now, with these new, a lot of times these artists are using what they call auto tunes and, like you said, preset to help them out in the studio. And when you get into a show, the show is not what you're expecting,
right?
Because you're looking for talent, and a lot of these it's not there, and a lot of these artists need singing coaches.
Yeah.
And when the 70s and 80s, individuals were actually singers.
Yeah, they had to be.
They actually were singers, and they actually would compete to see who was the best singer, and everybody wanted to be the lead. Everybody wanted, you know what I'm saying? So to be that, you had to know how to sing. So how do you feel about like some of these artists now? Like we just saw verses with two young individuals, Mario and Omarion, where it was kind of horrible. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, to be honest, like they needed help singing. You know, and
they have no experience. That's what happens. That's what I was saying before. You got artists like that who are coming up using all the tools to make them sound good in the house, in the backyard, in the basement. But you're going to have to go out there and face your audience at some point.
Right.
And when that happens, what are you going to do? They pull the wool down. You know what I mean? They pull the cover back, and now you're exposed. Now don't get me wrong. See, I'm all for tools that are being used. Okay, I don't look down upon the technology. I find that the technology can be helpful. There are settings on auto-tune that can give you pitch correction, okay, in a way that is not noticeable. Most people don't use that setting because they want to hear that crazy auto-tune sound, robot-y sound, so they end up using that instead. But to me, that's ridiculous to do that because it sounds like crap. And then, like you said, when you got to go see a show, what you got to do, plug into the box and start singing through a box live in front of everybody. It's, that's not entertainment. And like you said, also back in the day, everyone sang. And what was cool back in the day too is even if you had a peculiar sounding voice, it wasn't like a normal sounding voice, you could still have a hit record and still be popular because you had an unusual sounding voice.
Yes.
That was the reason. So even though you had maybe a quirky sounding voice, it still worked because it was still you singing. It was still that artist singing, even though he had a funny sounding voice, and it worked for that music, and the song would become a hit. I found that Sylvester had a funny voice. I don't know if you guys remember Sylvester.
Oh, I remember Sylvester.
Yeah, Sylvester had a funny voice. It was a strange ass voice.
But he could sing. He was a singing fool.
That's what I'm saying. So his sound, he had a sound, like we say, he had a sound. So, and today if you want a sound, you got to go to the box and use preset 6. That's my sound. That ain't no damn sound. Everybody got preset 6. Come on. So, I'm not down for it, and I believe that artists that are doing that are lucky because they're getting a quick hit, make some fast money, but you won't get the fuck out real quick because you ain't gonna last.
Right.
You ain't gonna last with that making an auto-tuned robot voice. How many records could you put out like that? For how long? Make the money. If that's who you are, make your money now, put it away, and get out. Get out. And thank God that you had the opportunity.
One of the things that I was very, very impressed with GQ because I go back into the way you could take an original song and then put it in a whole different spectrum, and it still would be an amazing hit. Like Standing Ovation, to me, was totally different from what the original is, and the way y'all did it was brilliant. And I was just like, wow. So was you the drummer on the Ovation then, on Standing Ovation?
No. As a matter of fact, the week that record was released, that was the week I joined the band. Okay. So I had, that's one of the first songs I had to learn how to play for GQ, because they were just releasing that Standing Ovation right when I joined the band, and we went out to Hawaii. That was our first. That was on the second album that had just been released, and they sent us right out to Hawaii because we were start a 40-night road tour to promote Standing Ovation. And again, the reason we could do that to songs like that, we did that with Sitting in the Park and I Do Love You too. We changed them up. The reason we could do that is because Raheem, myself, Boo, and Herb, we could play different genres of music. We could play jazz, we could play Latin music, we could play rock. So because we knew how to play other sounds and other genres of music, we could rely on those tools that we basically taught ourselves just out of experience of doing it. We learned how to take music and change it. Our ears were already developed to the point where we knew how to make commercial pop music. We knew how to do that already. So when we were taking a song, oh, another thing is, let me get this out, is the songs have to be good. Okay, the songwriting has to be excellent. Because you can't take a bad song and turn it into nothing. Okay, it has to be a good song to begin with. So you got to start out with songwriters that know how to write a hit, and then when they're handed to us, we would do our thing to it out of the experiences of us being able to hear it outside of what's being given to us. Meaning, they would bring me the song, and I would listen to the drum part that was on there. But then in my mind, I could break it down and hear it in my inner ear. I could hear different beat, a different rhythm, a different groove, a different pocket, depending on what they were asking for, what they were looking for. And we kind of had a knack, for the four of us, had a knack for, once we sat down in the room in the studio to play, we all kind of always fell into our spots, and again, that's just from years of experience and all of us knowing each other and playing. And I also believe our sound had a lot to do with us coming from that neighborhood. We all grew up there in the Soundview section of the Bronx, and back in the 60s and 70s when we were kids, all of us were kids back then, we grew up in that neighborhood listening to all kinds of music because that neighborhood was diverse. There was Asians, there was Jews, there was Puerto Ricans, there was Black, there was Haitians, there was Caribbean, there was South Americans. It was a very mixed neighborhood at that time, and everybody was playing their music. So we got to hear a lot. In my building alone, I remember, I lived on the 4th floor, so I go walking up the building, and at each landing, because they had no elevator, each landing I would walk by, I would hear Jimi Hendrix coming out of one apartment, and walk by the next apartment, hearing like Tito Puente coming out of the next apartment, hearing Miles Davis. So it was all this music coming at us in that neighborhood from every direction. So we picked up on all of it because I believe that's why there were so many musicians in that neighborhood too at the time, because it was just a lot of us there, and we were all listening to everything. We listened to everything. It wasn't like, oh, I don't listen to that. Man, I think the only music we didn't listen to was country western. I think that's the only music we didn't listen to. But eventually I started listening to some of that too, because some of that was pretty good. So
I was just going to ask you how growing up in a multicultural Bronx in the Soundview area was
great.
influence on your music.
It was great.
And you just answered it, because it's like when you're growing up in an area where you have nothing but different kinds of music, because you said you played in a salsa band. And I was going to ask you, how was the transition from playing in a salsa band to playing in an R&B band, and how did you put your spin on that type of music?
Well, I found that going from the Latin rock to the funk soul R&B band, what was the same was the intensity of the passion behind the playing of the music. The soul of the music was very similar. It come from the same place, because salsa was invented in the barrio. That music was, it's music from the city, really. Salsa music. It came from the early mambo and the cha-cha stuff from the islands. But when it came to New York, they added a certain heat and groove that wasn't the same as the early Latin music, and they called it salsa because it was hotter. It was a hotter music. So I found that with funk and R&B, especially the more high-end up-tempo stuff, and the straight up Latin rock intensity, very similar in the soul of it, where you played it hard, you played it with passion, and you played it in the pocket, because both musics are about dancing. Okay, dancing is one of the main reasons that both those genres exist: the salsa and the disco and the soul music. It's all about dancing. So you had to be, as drummer in both genres of music, you had to be able to lock in to a groove, a pocket that the dancers could dance.
Absolutely.
And that's one thing I learned about being a drummer in those genres of music, was to find that perfect tempo, that perfect, BPM, man. You had to know where that lived, where disco lived, or where Latin music, salsa music, where that favorite dance pocket lived, and it became my heartbeat, you know. And when I played in both those bands, I would tap right into that, man. And as a singing drummer, which is also a rare thing, not a lot of us singing drummers around. That was another thing, because you have to be able to play, sing, and breathe all at the same time without gulping, without gulping air between breaths, between lines. You got to be able to do that, make it all smooth and breathable. And so, I learned how to do that just out of the experience of playing all the time, 5-6 nights a week forever, and playing different genres of music, which opened up my musicianship and my ear. It opened up my ear, and it taught me how to play for dancers, which is real important, man. Which is why I got most of the work in my life, because I'm a drummer that I will make your ass dance.
Yes.
Now, how is it the first time when you played in front of a big audience and they just was going crazy?
Oh,
You know,
I can tell you. One of the biggest shows I did was at Giant Stadium. That was the summer. I think it was July of 1980. It was the Budweiser Summer Fan Fest, and that was one of my first biggest shows. We had 56,000 people at this event in Giant Stadium, sold out, on the field too. It was just completely packed, and I remember it was going to be my first like super big concert. Okay, I remember walking out to the edge side of the stage just to peek and look at the big crowd. And one of my roadies that was part of our road crew was standing next to me. And I stuck my head out and I heard all these girls start screaming. And I was like, and I started looking around to see who they were screaming at. I'm looking around like, wow, who are they screaming at? Who are they seeing? And the roadie next to me turned around and looked at me and goes, "Yo, Steve, they're screaming for you." And I was like, "What?" He's like, "They're screaming for you. Look." And I kind of looked into and I could see that the girls were waving at me and they were all screaming at me. And I was like, holy shit, what is this? Yeah. So that was kind of overwhelming. And then, from that point on, I started to do more and more large arenas like Hobo Arena in Detroit, Soldiers Field in Chicago. These were all like 50, 60,000 seaters, man, and they were sold out, all these shows. And we were on we were on with a lot of big acts too. It was like a lot of top acts. And I don't forget that stuff, man, because when there's that many people, especially if it's at night, you don't see them. You can't really see them because it's dark. The lights are out. The lights are all shining at us on the stage, and that kind of blinds you to the first. Maybe see the first 2 rows, but that's it. But you can feel 56,000 people.
Yes,
you can actually feel them, and that is something I picked up right away. The energy is like electric, man. And my most exciting moments were, walking out to the stage to sit behind my drums and the rest of the guys are, putting their guitars over their shoulders, and Herbie's going to sit behind a keyboard, but we're doing that in the dark while the MC's out front introducing us. And when he screams out the name GQ, and I'm counting the first song off, 2, 3, 4, man, and them lights hit, pow, and the audience at that moment screams at the top of their lungs, because that's what the moment they've been waiting for. And that is the highest moment usually of any show, that first intro. And man, it's like a wave. It's like a tidal wave of energy. You could feel the love. You can feel the energy of the excitement of everybody. It's electric. It's a feeling I've never had anywhere else in my life other than that. Being on a stage with, in a situation like that. It's amazing.
I would like to ask
and blessed.
I would like to ask you 2 questions pertaining to your label mates.
Yes.
And both of these label mates were fantastic in their right of the industry. Number one is one I had a crush on when I was little, which was Angela Bofield. And
she was doll.
yes, and the one you mentioned earlier, Phyllis Hyman. Now, I want to ask you, how was it working with her? Because she was such a dynamic woman, and I feel her life was cut short. And
it absolutely was.
There was so much about her, and I've heard rumors about there may be a possible biopic pic of her. So I would like to get your version of Phyllis Hyman.
I have heard that rumor also. Don't know how true it is because it hasn't happened, but I have heard talk of that also, that of a biopic. I'm hoping that it's true because she needs to be remembered on that level. That's who she was. Had she survived her fame, she would be the Ella Fitzgerald of today. Okay, she would have grown to be that because she was already on that path to begin with. She was such a wonderful girl. She was a sweetheart. She was kind. Her talent was beyond words. The sound of her voice was God sent. She was an angel. Just the sound and the way she interpreted music. There's people that are singers. She wasn't a singer. She was an interpreter. You can give this woman a song, and she's going to take it to a place that no one else will. Okay, and that's because she has that special magic, of interpreting a piece of music. And that's far and few. You got like someone like Aretha. You have somebody like Ella Fitzgerald, Billie Holiday. These are the types of iconic voices that are interpreters. They're not just singers.
Yes.
They're interpreters of songs. You can give them any well-written song, and they're going to take it to another level. 1,000 people could have sang the same damn song, and you give it to one of these artists like Phyllis, and she's going to take it to a place that no one ever took it to.
Yeah.
Because they're special. And I got to only work with her a few times, and when she passed, it was devastating to all of us that knew her because it was an accident. It was a bad moment. She suffered from depression. The business would do that to you. It's a tough business, especially for women, especially at that time in the business, where singers like her, Natalie, Whitney, they were all being pretty abused by the people around them. They were being taken advantage of musically, business wise, and it was harder for them as women to survive in the music business with all the underhanded stuff that goes on in the business. And these women were like Phyllis. She was very soft-hearted person. She always tried to do the right thing. She learned the business, but it was the music business even today is still an underhanded business, and unless you have somebody that's in your court that's gonna really protect you on levels that are not normally seen, that's another thing that's hard to find. That protector, that guardian, that manager, that can be all those things without taking advantage of you, So she was. Yeah, you talk about her and it brings it all back. It was a tough loss. It was a tough loss because she was and of course she was beautiful. My God, she was beautiful. She'd walk into the room and she was tall. She was tall, a little taller than me. I'm 5'10". She must have been about 6 feet tall. Tall girl. And she'd walk in with her high heels and she'd just look up to her. It was like looking up to a goddess. She was just amazing. She was an amazing girl. And I feel blessed that I even got to know a moment to know her and a chance a few times to make music with her. It was an experience I'll never forget. So.
Now, speaking of, losing individuals, how impactful was it when Sabu returned to the essence when he passed away for the group?
Oh, I'm sorry. You're gonna have to repeat that question because I'm outside and the subway just went by. I live across the train.
No problem.
Guys, hit me again.
All right. How impactful was it when Sabu passed away, returned to the essence for the group?
Yeah, that was a tough loss for us. Boo, well, God, I know Boo since I'm 19. And Raheem knows Boo since he's 14, 15 years old. So he's our brother. It's like losing your flesh and blood brother. Plus, we also feel like warriors. Like we've been through Vietnam together. That's how we feel about the GQ experience in total. Uh, Going through the business side of it was very difficult. A movie should be made about the business side of what GQ went through, because books can be written about that. There is a book out, I know now, written by our ex-manager, but I sad to say that the book is mostly lies, and it's his version of what he wants people to believe happened. But what he wrote was pretty much to cover his own ass, because back then GQ had very bad management. And the reason GQ isn't really around today is because of that bad management. Losing Boo, we lost Boo through substance abuse, basically, and it's depression. And a lot of that depression came from the bad business that went down with GQ, and the opportunities that were lost, because of it. And he suffered. Boo suffered a lot with what happened, and it didn't really have a good place for it. And he was a tough guy. He wouldn't reach out to. It was hard to get. Boo had a really big heart, and when he got hurt, he would go internal. He would shut down, and so that's kind of how we lost him. Through the substance abuse and all that years of doing that, it all caught up to him, and he got pretty sick. And he got to the point where his body couldn't respond anymore to trying to get better, and the meds to try to heal him, and it didn't work, and so we lost him. And I think about him all the time. He was an amazing musician. You know who his dad was? He was a big doo-wop singer and had multi hits. His father, back in the '50s, he was part of some of the biggest doo-wop bands that had hits back then. So Boo came from a musical background, musical family, and he was a self-taught bass player. He didn't take lessons. He taught himself, which is why the bass lines in Standing Ovation and the bass line in Disco Nights are unlike any of the typical disco bass lines you would hear back in the day. If you listen to those two songs, listen to those bass parts, and then listen to other songs that were out at that same time, and ain't nothing like it. Nothing. I mean, Boo was unique in his approach and the way he played his instrument. And I'm thankful that he had those two hits, because now it's part of the history of our music. It's the history of soul, history of R&B. We're a link in that chain, and I'm glad that made it that far, because Boo, even though he's gone physically, his music is here forever. Long after I'm gone, all of us are gone. That music is always going to be there. People will still be listening to that music, and they will hear Boo and me and Ra and her. Will still be heard, and people will realize that's why those songs were hits. The uniqueness of the sound of those tracks, you know. And Boo was a major part of that original sound.
I tell you, we're getting close to the end of the show, and this has been so informative, and like I said, I'm so appreciative that you came on, and I want to say thank you for coming on and giving us the history of GQ, and then also too giving us your history, giving us the history of music itself, because these are some things that the newer generation needs to hear when it comes down to artistry, showmanship, how to actually be a great bandmate. That's something that's needed as well. And like I said, I want to thank you, and want to, salute the band GQ, because like I said in the very beginning, that was the first band who were part of the 5% Nation that ushered us across the world. Ushered us across the world, and to pay respects to Sabu and Raheem and yourself, what I mean, we salute you and we thank you, for waving our banner, waving our flag all across the country, across the world.
Yeah. Thank you. I want to say thank you to both of you too. Thank you for helping keeping the history and the music alive. If that's important, and you guys are doing good work by doing that, because young musicians and artists that are coming up need to know our history so that they can make their own history and add to our legacies. You guys were incredible interviewers. Your questions were so on point. You made it easy to talk to. And I enjoyed every second. I can't believe it went by so quick. I waited too long. You can have me back again. We could talk more about other things.
Yeah, and I was just going to say that we would love to bring you back and do a part two.
Love to come back for part two. Love to. Got plenty more stories to tell.
Hey, and we might have to do a little later so we can get some of them Studio 54 numbers.
Yeah. There you go. Sounds good to me.
That's that backdoor talk. That we do.
Yeah, that backdoor talk.
Oh yeah. I got some stories.
But again, thank you so much. And again, like you said, you're still playing. So do you have any shows or anything that's coming up that you would like individuals to come see?
I have a new band. that I put together with my partners. We're called the Virtual Band. We came together. We were a bunch of musicians that we've known each other and played together for 45 years. The keyboard player is Curtis Styles. He's from the BB&Q band. The guitar player is Brian Coke Lammers. He is from the Heatwave band. We got Laurie Rose, our lead vocalist, who was signed to MCA Records. She's an MCA recording artist. She was in Devotion. She also had a bunch of club hits back in the 80s and 90s. So this band is like an all-star band of musicians that have been and toured with Gloria Gaynor, Slave, GQ, Heatwave, BB&Q. So we're a bunch of veterans, and we play the real deal. We're called the Virtual Band. We will be performing at this Thursday. That's the 11th, August 11th at 7 p.m. Up in Harrison, Silver Lake. That's a free outdoor concert. We'll be in Manhattan on September 23rd at the Cutting Room, 9 o'clock show. We're going to be playing all the hits from all the bands that we've been part of. We're going to be playing some of our new R&B jams that we wrote, new material. You can find us on SoundCloud. We have 26 tracks up on SoundCloud right now. We're on Spotify, and you can find our webpage, the Virtual Band NYC, on Facebook. So go check us out. You see our photos, go see clips of our music, some videos, all of that. It's all there for you to see. And thanks for asking.
Yes. No problem. Yes. Might get a chance to check you out a week before my birthday on the September 23rd show then.
Please do, man. Come on by. If you want to come, just contact me. I'll put you on the guest list.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah,
hey,
you got it.
Man. Yeah. This was an impactful show, man.
Hey, look, I'm especially excited because I am a drummer. I am
all
I've
right.
been playing for a long time. So everything that you was talking about, the authenticity and of it, nothing like the original acoustic drum is period. Can't be.
Thank you.
Thank you. And that is
Skin and wood.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Well, Mr. Stevie Beats Adorno, it has been magnificent. It has been a treasure. It has been delightful. It has been one great show. Thank you. We thank you. We thank you. And again, you are home right here with the Real2reel360. Can't say nothing else more about it. So whenever you're ready, whenever you're ready, you have a seat right here. So.
Right.
Thank you, man. I'm always ready, so just call me.
Absolutely.
All right.
Now, Shamel, we got a couple more announcements before we get out of here. So who we have coming up?
we have MC Glamorous, who was one of the first artists on Juice Crew. She was signed to Marley Marl back in the early 80s. We also took as a coming back is King's Son, and as well as Positive K.
Okay. All right. And also, ladies and gentlemen, please don't forget, this coming Saturday, the 13th, you will find the Real 360. We are part of Sabina B Productions 910. There's a concert, Stop the Violence concert, one night only. We will be in Darlington, South Carolina that evening. Doors open up at 7:30. Showtime is at 9. You don't want to miss what's going down because it will be a great show. We have all different artists of different genres that will be there in the building. So you don't want to miss it out. All right. Again, I'm so elated. GQ in the building. History, living history, and we give you your flowers while you still yet live, and we salute you, my brother, each and every day the righteous way.
Thank you, man. Much love. Much love.
If you could, like after the show, just give us 2 minutes so we can talk with you a little bit more.
Sure.
And man, this is great. Okay.
I'll stay on here.
Okay. I appreciate it.
We'll be right here. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you once again for attending our show. We appreciate each and every one of you for all the comments and positive vibrations you send us each time as we listen to the show. I like to say peace to everybody that was on the panel that gave their comments and words. We love y'all, and we will see you when we see you. We're going to cut this short because we got a lot of things going on behind the scenes right now. All right. So again, to all the 5% Nation of Guards and Nurse, we say peace. And to all the human families of the planet Earth, we bid you much love, peace, and happiness. All right. I'm DJ K-Wise, and on behalf of my brother in God, Josh Amel Allah, a.k.a. Mr. PhD, Real2reel360 says peace, and we are, like before, with lights on, we are lights out. We'll see you.
Yo, ladies and gentlemen, we're starting to come to the end of the show. Right now, I want to take the time out and thank our guests for coming on. Also, too, I want to make sure that y'all listening and subscribing, and tell a friend and keep sharing, because we're going to keep bringing y'all the real content. You know what I mean? So, DJ K-Wise, brother, take us up out of here, son. Hey.
I want to give a big shout out to the Nation of Guards and Nurses, to all the human families on the planet Earth. I say peace. But you are subscribers, those who continue to watch and listen to the show each and every time we come on. I give a big shout out to love, peace, and happiness. To be the man, woman, and child of the you and I verse. It's time for us to disperse. We bring the best, not the worst. We thank you once again for tuning in to the Real 360. Bring a friend to hit that like and subscribe, so we continue to grow to bring more knowledge and wisdom to you. Upon our show, you make it possible for us to do what we do. Now it's time I end it just the way I bring it.